1. Hi all. I'm a 24-year-old woman who lived in rural Victoria, Australia with my mum and my older brother, who is 5 years older than me. For context, my mother's side is Italian and my nonna is very superstitious. Needle and thread to determine the sex of your future children. I've had this done multiple times, 2 girls and a boy. It would correctly identify my auntie's children who were already born, and the needle would be still on any man who would try. It's not supposed to work on men. As well as the bowl full of water and dropping oil into it to read curses and jealousy. When I was 14-ish, one of my mother's best friends, Jen, died of a heart attack. I had known this woman my whole life, and we used to live down the road when my parents were together. Our family was heartbroken and felt negatively towards the husband, as Jen had a heart attack late at night in bed next to her husband, to which he woke up and ran to the neighbors for help, before returning and started doing chest compressions while she was still in bed. Even at 15, I knew you needed a hard surface for chest compressions to be useful. Jen unfortunately passed away in that bed the 12th of December 2015. About a year later, myself, my mom, and my brother were sitting at our kitchen table after finishing dinner, and my mom was recounting ghost stories. Faces in the window of her bedroom, her grandfather walking the hallways at night, when my mother got up to use the bathroom. Keep in mind that she grew up on a farm with at least 2 long paddocks separating the house from the road, and had 2 dogs that barked at anything. My mother mentioned that she could still feel Jen with her in her heart, and we all started recounting fond memories of Jen. Suddenly, the light, only above our heads, started to flicker, and went out briefly. The light of the TV with MASH on mute stayed on, as well as our Christmas tree. We were used to the power cutting out for short periods of time on stormy nights, but this night was in the midst of summer and eerily quiet, despite our house being next to a truck route. It also happened to be the week of the 1-year anniversary of Jen's passing. Our family was silent during the seconds the light flickered out, and continued to be silent when the light came back on. The kitchen felt breezy, and I could see we all had goosebumps. My brother and I began to laugh the whole thing off, and that's when my mother's phone rang. She pointed the phone screen at us, and my brother and I stilled. It was Jen's number. My mother answered the phone, and after a minute of silence, the call was ended. We all sat in silence for minutes until my brother and I pushed out of our seats saying, "Nope, nope, nope," repeatedly. My mother clutched the phone to her chest and cried silently. My brother and I were pretty freaked out, so we stayed with Mum in the lounge. That was the first and only night our family watched MASH. 2. Firstly, here's the location of Owl Hollow, as it doesn't appear on most maps. 45.35988 degrees north, 121.37571 degrees west. I honestly don't know why I'm even writing this. It's not like anyone's going to believe me anyway. Maybe it's just to get it out of my head. Maybe it's some kind of warning. I don't know. Last October, I went hiking alone near Mount Hood. I was trying to get away from everything: work, noise, people. I found this spot on an old Forest Service map called Owl Hollow near Jordan Creek. Sounded perfect. Secluded, quiet. Barely even mentioned online. The first few hours were fine. Peaceful, even. Just the sound of the creek and my boots crunching gravel. It felt good. Like I could breathe again. But sometime in the afternoon that feeling started creeping in. You know the one. Like somebody's watching you. At first I tried to shake it off, told myself I was being stupid. Big woods, alone, of course, you're going to feel jumpy. But it kept getting worse. Around 3 p.m., I looked off the trail into the trees, and there were a pair of eyes staring at me through the brush. Not blinking, just watching. It wasn't a deer. I know what deer look like. This was different. Lower to the ground, wrong shape, no sound at all. I kept hiking, probably faster than I should have. About an hour later, I came around a bend, and there they were, a man and a woman standing in the middle of the trail. I don't know how to explain it. Everything about them just felt off immediately. Their clothes were weird, like they'd walked out of an old photograph. Faded colors, stiff fabric, almost dusty. I tried to say hello, maybe ask if they needed help, but my voice just kind of died. They didn't say anything either, just stared. And when they passed me, they both turned their heads at the same time and smiled. I can't even describe it right. It wasn't human. Their mouths stretched way too wide. Their teeth were wrong, sharp and dirty. And their eyes turned black. Not like dark irises black, like bottomless pits. I almost threw up. I almost ran. But they just kept walking like nothing had happened, disappearing into the woods behind me. I should have left then. I should have turned around, sprinted back to my truck, never looked back, but I didn't. I kept going. Dumbass. By the time I set up camp that night, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the tent up. It didn't matter. I wasn't sleeping anyway. As the sun went down, the woods around me got wrong. Too quiet. No birds, no bugs. Nothing but the creak and the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. Then I started seeing them. First one, then two, then more. 17 or 18 of them, crouched in the trees, peeking from behind rocks, half buried in the tall grass. All with those same twisted smiles, all with those black eyes. I sat there by the fire, clutching my pistol, feeling like I was going to pass out from terror. They didn't move. They didn't get closer. They just watched. I don't know what snapped, but I stood up and fired 2 shots straight into the air. The sound echoed through the trees, sharp and painful. They didn't even flinch. That's when I ran. I grabbed my pack and ran like my life depended on it, because honestly, I think it did. I don't remember getting back to the car. I don't even remember driving home. I just remember slamming the door behind me and sitting there in the dark for hours, shaking, gun still in my hand. I haven't told anybody until now. People would think I'm crazy. Hell, I think I'm crazy sometimes when I replay it in my head. But I know what I saw, and I'm telling you, if you ever find yourself near Owl Hollow, turn around. Get out while you can. Some places are better off forgotten. 3. Before I get started with the story, I would like to give some background information about myself. Although I was born in Korea, I spent most of my life overseas, mostly sea countries and Australia. However, during the widespread of COVID, my parents decided to go back to Korea until the whole lockdown thing was over. For the first several weeks, I was really glad to finally live in my home country, only to discover that it would be an absolute nightmare. Our house was on the top floor, 4th floor, of an old apartment located at the outskirts of Seoul. It was our temporary home, as our primary residence was going through some major redevelopment, which was again delayed by COVID. It was a typical quiet and peaceful Korean neighborhood, with a small mountain right behind our block. During the day hours it was very vibrant with people hiking, but once the sun sets it turned pitch black with only moonlight lighting the area. My room faced a mountain, and I loved it. After years of living near the coast, I had really missed being surrounded by greenery again. I still remember clearly when this lady first paid me a visit. It was a balmy late summer night, and I had both my balcony door and window open. I woke up at the middle of the night to a sudden breeze blowing across my face, and when I opened my eyes, I saw a middle-aged lady in a red hiking outfit standing on my balcony. I tried to look away, but my body just froze, and all I could do was stare at her walking into my room. She slowly walked around my room a few times and walked out the way she entered. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself I was just tired and hallucinating. But she came back a week later, and this time I saw her carefully climbing in through the window onto the balcony before stepping into my room. She walked straight to my bed, stood beside me, looked down at me for a while, and then left again. But that wasn't the only thing going wrong. Since we moved in, my parents had been arguing more and more, and my brother barely spoke anymore. This just kept going on for about a month, and I got so used to it that I got to a point where I'm not even bothered. One day, as I was walking home with my mom, she suddenly stopped halfway up the stairs and said, "It feels like this house is trying to suck the life out of me." I was stunned because I had been feeling the exact way. The next day, I sat down with my dad and told him everything. We concluded that I gotta find out why she's visiting our house every day. On that very night when I woke up, the lady was by my bed. I still wasn't able to move my body, but I looked into her to ask why she is visiting me every night. To my surprise, she began to sob and left, just like she did on the first night. Now my family is back in Singapore, and I am in Australia living the repetitive, boring life of a PhD student. But to this day, I still wonder why she came to see me and why she never told me her reason. P.S. About 6 months ago, long after we had moved out, I drove back to that old house. I parked the car and walked into the building lobby, but as I stood there, I had this instinct that told me not to go up those stairs. I turned around and left without looking back. 4. My uncle, a wallpapering expert, and my father, a skilled carpenter, teamed up for a project. An old white Victorian house nestled in the quiet seclusion of rural Connecticut. For my 13-year-old self and my 11-year-old cousin, this was more than just a renovation project. It was an open invitation to explore our fascination with the supernatural. This particular house felt like hitting the jackpot. The property sprawled across several acres, boasting a built-in greenhouse. Further out, a dilapidated shed leaned at the yard's edge, where the forest began. Even without any ghost stories, the entire scene possessed a certain eerie charm, which is a quality often found in the old homes of the East Coast, to be honest. Left to our own devices, we approached the back of the house at kitchen entrance. A basement door loomed wide open by the entrance with an immediate unwelcome vibe. A certain sense settled over me, a feeling that something resided there, and it wasn't exactly good. Despite the thrill of quenching my curiosities, the urge to remain in yard for the rest of the afternoon was almost overwhelming. But my cousin was too bold for this. As we ventured deeper into the house, a profound dread came over me, each step feeling heavier than the last. My body seemed to resist the house. My cousin, meanwhile, was claiming to hear things and became fixated on exploring the attic. Honestly, I was already beyond done with this place. Even my 13-year-old brain registered that this was not a good place. All I wanted to do was go sit in the car. We made our way up to the attic, and to my relief it had been renovated. Despite the lingering unease, it wasn't the least bit creepy visually. There was even a small TV which I turned on, sitting on the floor in front of it. But my cousin's attention was snagged by a closed door. She stood before it, completely still, her gaze fixed. Now this was an 11-year-old who was usually a whirlwind of energy, constantly talking or making sounds, so her sudden silence spoke volumes. I tried to ignore it, but then she grabbed the knob and began yanking on it. But the door wouldn't budge. So, logically, it was likely an unfinished storage area, so the wood was probably swollen shut from moisture. Looking back now, though, I think I was wrong. I stood up to help her. The door was genuinely jammed, but she became almost frantic. Her insistence on opening it was bordering on aggression. It was super disturbing to see her like this. I started pulling with all my strength, and the door finally gave way with a strong burst. I fell backward, still gripping the doorknob. All of a sudden, a powerful gust of wind swept over us, whipping our hair back. My cousin screamed the sound of pure terror, frozen in place, her eyes wide. By the time I regained my balance and rushed to see what she was seeing, there was nothing. But I swear her sheer terror was real. This particular room was the true attic, unfinished with splintered wood, random old antiques scattered about, and a grimy old window. Upon looking in, an intense wave of nausea hit me. I slammed the door shut without a second thought. A primal fear surged through me, and I immediately scooped up my cousin and bolted down the stairs, out of that house, and into the yard. Even now, she won't tell me what she saw. She just laughs it off and changes the subject. It leaves me constantly questioning, was that terror just a figment of my overactive imagination, or was it something tangible? The feeling was so intense, so visceral, it made me physically ill. I don't know the history of that house, but deep down, in my soul, I feel that something truly awful happened there. 5. Back when I lived in Georgia, Columbus. I lived in this real old crap box of a house on a property developed back in the late 1800s. The guy who originally bought the land and developed it was a jack-off in my opinion, because the property has like 9 different soil types on it, so he could make his own little personal paradise garden. And as someone with severe allergen issues, that kinda screwed with me a lot living there. Except during particularly heavy rains that washed away the literal waves of pollen and the rare snowy winters. So anyway, it's a rare snowy winter. I want to say, hell, I forget the exact year. Late aughts, I think. Or maybe it was the early teens. Maybe some other poor sucker in Georgia can remind me when we had good hard snow Columbus ways between 15 and 20 years ago. And me and my dad are doing stuff around the house, i.e. he's drinking hard because he's a retired Marine, and Marines all have drinking problems to cope with PTSD. This is sarcasm, but he really did have a drinking problem. And I'm awake despite the late hour, so he has someone other than Mom to pester with his incessant talking. Seriously, get my dad going when he's drunk. He's worse than the SoCal Valley girl. We're loading the fireplace. The dogs are sleeping. We see the firewood pile is low, and both go out to grab more firewood. By which I mean mostly me carrying it. Dad's drunk butt will fall over if he does it. It's no longer snowing super hard, but it's still going, and it is foggy as hell out there. There's a funeral home up on the top of the hill beyond the house, past this mid-sized retaining pond and pit that keeps our house from flooding when it rains real bad. And the parking lot of the home has a couple of street lights. From the light nearest our house, me and Dad see a silhouette out against the snow. It's small, maybe, just over 4 feet tall, which says child, and me and Dad, being the at least halfway decent people we are, start going up to see what the hell. Why is there a kid out there at 0:30? And we find this kid. He can't be more than 10, maybe 11 years old, pale as death like he's been out in the snow for hours, and all he's wearing is a damn nightgown. He looks terrified, and he's shaking, and he just stares at us, not saying a word. Dad sobers up almost instantly and gently tells the kid to follow us. We gotta get him inside. He's gonna freeze to death out here. I agree and reach out to offer him a hand. He recoils away and doesn't touch me, but he nods a bit when we gently invite him in, promise to get him warmed up, and maybe something to eat or drink, and follows us down the hill and into the house. His face lights up immediately as soon as he's past the back door and in what is ostensibly our laundry room. He stops shivering. He stops looking scared. He just looks calm, content now. Dad and I turn and start to rush off to get him some blankets, towels, set up a space heater. We both turned away from him for less than 2 seconds, and I turned back around real quick, because I was going to ask him if he wanted soup or maybe some chicken. He was effing gone. Disappeared, like a fart in the wind. I grab Dad's arm and he turns back, and he almost turns as white as that kid was, which is impressive for someone who's visibly half Cherokee, and thus much more red rather than white. The kid is completely 100% gone. We look outside. We see no footprints. The boy was barefoot, but the only tracks were me and Dad's boots, nothing else. Dad and I stared at each other for a while. Dad was clearly questioning whether or not he'd had some kind of drunk hallucination. Except I was there, and I'd seen the boy too, and I almost never touch booze. So that was definitely not a damn hallucination. Over the following week and a half, both of us asked around about a boy in a nightgown. It wasn't until Dad mentioned it to old Mrs. Funderburk. She died at 98. She was only 96 at that point. So she'd been around a fricking spell that we got an answer. Sort of. According to Mrs. Funderburg, when she was a child and the area was a lot less developed, that way back before she was born there was an old ghost story about a boy who had been found dead in a rare Georgia snowstorm not far from where our house was, in nothing but a nightgown. Nobody knew how or why. All anyone had was guesses, but it wasn't uncommon for people to claim seeing a boy, or at least his silhouette, in our area in the dead of night during really bad snowstorms. But nobody had ever gotten close to him before. He'd always run off or just disappear into the snow and fog. The best guess that me and Dad could come up with, after Mrs. Funderburg told us all we knew, is that the kid must have gotten locked outside of his house. I can only hope by a tragic accident rather than act of cruelty. During some major blizzard, there was a pretty bad one in 1910, but for my part, I always figured it must have been the Great Blizzard of 1899 and just couldn't get back in. Judging by what me and Dad saw, the boy had been pretty damn frail. He would have frozen to death quickly once the mercury went to 32 Fahrenheit or lower. But he disappeared when we brought him inside. It's been a while since that happened, at least 15 years. Nobody I've spoken to, including people who used to live in our immediate vicinity, has seen anything like what me and Dad saw. And sometimes, even now, I find myself wondering if that was defo real, and not just me and Dad having some kind of shared hallucination somehow. Had that kid been there all this time? Was all he wanted to be invited into someplace warm? Maybe somewhere he used to live, and that was good enough. I can still see his face if I think about it. That half-frozen, scared little face. Did it really take 100-some-odd years or more for someone to care enough to try and bring him out of the cold? Hey all, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for watching Paranormal Stories 425. Big thanks to all the good folks who let me use their stories in this video. If you'd like to support the channel and as a thank you get weekly access to the videos all at once on a Monday, then you can sign up for my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. You can also buy some merchandise, also linked in the description for you, on my Teespring store. Okay. And before we go on, a special shout out goes to the author of story number 1, Small Lil Bean. Thank you very much for letting me use your story. Now let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, what was the last spooky/supernatural themed film that you saw? It doesn't have to be scary, just has to have ghosts and things in it, horror type, or comedy horror and such, that you saw, and did you enjoy it? The last one I saw was Beetlejuice. And yes, I did enjoy it. It was, honestly, I'd say it was probably just about as good as the first one. I'm hearing rumors they're planning to do a third one. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're going to finally do Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian, but yeah, apparently they're planning a third one. And why not? Because Michael Keaton and Winona Ryder, I'm not going to say they've not aged. They obviously look a little bit older, but my heavens, they do not look their ages, which quite frankly is rude of them. But I enjoy them both as performers, so more movies, please, would be appreciated. If you saw that movie and enjoyed it, please leave your opinions in a comment below, and if you didn't, why don't you tell me about something you've seen? I look forward to reading your answers. Okay. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one comes from Paranormal Stories 423, and it was about if you have the option, working from home or working in an office. Today's answer comes from Grey Warden Invasion. We can work from home, but unfortunately only 2 days a week. I have proven that I'd be far more productive when I'm working from home than when I'm surrounded by colleagues. Everything I do can be done over my work laptop. Still, it's not allowed to work for more than 2 days from home. Thank you very much for your answer, Grey Warden. Hopefully, as time moves on, that policy is changed. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.